Hello and good afternoon. I would like to welcome everyone to today's webinar and the first webinar of May, the dollar costs of immigration for employers, current employees, and future foreign talent. Thank you for everyone currently in attendance and for joining us today. We have a great presentation ahead of us, and this presentation will last for about 45 minutes. A reminder that today's broadcast is being recorded, and we will send a link to download the recording after today's live session. We also encourage you to ask questions throughout the presentation, and we'll try to get to those questions at the conclusion of the main presentation. To do so, please use the question function that you see on the right-hand side of your screen. For those that are unfamiliar with Envoy, for nearly 20 years, Envoy has been on a mission to fix the frustrating, confusing, and inefficient immigration process. Envoy combines expert legal representation with innovative technology to deliver the only platform that makes it seamless for companies to hire, mobilize, and manage a global workforce. Envoy secures work authorization in 150 plus countries, has grown 46% year to date, and works with over 1,000 customers. Envoy is particularly proud of their NPS score, which is a testament to the employee experience we provide. All right, now I'd like to introduce our main presenter for today's webinar. Ryan Bay is currently a partner at Envoy's affiliated law firm, Global Immigration Associates. He brings over 5 years of immigration experience to his current role with both law firm practice and immigration work for Capgemini. Ryan received his BA in Classics Cum Laude from Monmouth College. He then went on to Western State University, where he was awarded his JD Cum Laude in 2010. He is currently licensed to practice law in Illinois and maintains eligibility to resume active status in California. Ryan, so glad you could join us this afternoon.
Happy to be here. Hi, everyone.
Great. So before I turn things over to Ryan, I just want to briefly touch upon the agenda. We're going to be discussing briefly the ongoing talent shortage, then dive into the government costs of immigration, and finally, we will look at how technology can help develop an immigration budget. And as a reminder, the content of this presentation is not intended as legal advice, so reach out to a qualified attorney if you have additional questions or need assistance. All right, so with that out of the way, let's discuss the ongoing talent shortage. So a recent survey from, or study from Gartner found that talent shortage is a top concern for employers across the globe. Just to give an idea here, in Q1 of 2018, the number one concern was cloud computing, and talent shortage was not even in the top 5. Fast forward to Q3 2018, and talent shortage moves up to the 3rd overall concern, and Q4 of 2018 is when talent shortage jumps to number 1. So that just gives you an idea of how much employers are concerned about that. And if you would like to read that full report, I included a link in the footnote section, so when you receive this slide deck tomorrow, you'll be able to follow that link and download the report. So how can companies navigate the talent shortage? Well, one way is by hiring foreign talent to fill those gaps. And as we see here in our based off of our 2019 Immigration Trends Report, sourcing foreign national employees is very important for a company's talent acquisition strategy. In 2019, 95% of respondents said sourcing foreign national employees is either extremely important, very important, or somewhat important. And that's in line with what we saw in 2018 and 2017. I'll also include a link to download this study for your reference after this presentation. So obviously when you're hiring foreign talent, it's likely you're going to have to provide an ROI of sponsoring that foreign talent. How much time is being dedicated to immigration, whether it's weekly or monthly, and how much your HR department is projected to spend on immigration during the next fiscal year. And these include government fees, legal fees, perks like dependent sponsorship, and then how much is also being spent on employee retention, which includes the green card process and visa renewals. So with that, I'm going to turn things over to Ryan. He's going to dive a little bit deeper into the government costs of immigration and just shed some light on what these costs are and whatnot. So Ryan, take it away.
And I'm sure several of you are aware of these fees, but I'll briefly touch upon them and what they are, and I always go to questions at the end. So for every H1B, no matter what type of H1B it is, there's going to be a flat fee of $460. And then after that, you're going to have various other fees depending on the type of petition you are filing. So let's say, for example, you're filing an H1B change of employer, you're always going to have that $500 extra fee. And if you're an employer of over 25 employees, you're going to have that extra $1,500 fee. If you're under 25, it'd be that $750 fee. So the fees start to rack up immediately. And over the past 10 years, I think, since President Bush, the fees were added, and these fees are allocated to certain programs in the government that Eric will touch upon later. So they get up there, and then of course you have attorney fees, and this comes from a study that's in the presentation, and Eric can send that around later. But H1B fees vary greatly from law firm to law firm and complexity to simple cases. So you see there, we're already adding up quite a bit. And then of course, with the U.S. government, there could be an RFE, and for those unfamiliar with an RFE, they're usually something just asking for clarification about the job or whether someone really qualifies. And these are hard, to put together. It's sort of a last effort to make sure the case gets approved. Much more complex than the initial filing itself. So it's not uncommon for law firms to charge more for these due to the amount of time that's put into them. And then moving on to the next slide. And here are some other fees that come up. And premium processing, that's $14.10 now. It used to be $12.25. But of course, they raised the fees to accommodate for their own administration costs. And if you're an employer, and I'm not sure, there's too many out there, but they're there. If you, there could be an additional $4,000 fee if over 50% of your workforce are on H1B and L1. There's other considerations there, but as you can see, they keep on going up. And finally, we're down to the visa application. Now, not everyone's going to have this. This is when a person leaves the U.S. and they need the actual visa at a U.S. consulate. If they're in the U.S. already, this isn't needed. This is usually a cost borne by the employee, not the company. So when they go to the U.S. consulate, they're going to pay this $190 fee to get their actual visa stamp and their passport. But it's not always needed. A lot of times you see employees that think they must leave the U.S., they must get their visa stamp, but they don't need to. And of course, consult with your counsel if you have questions on that. So, in total, you see these combined costs. I won't go over them, but for each application, it gets quite high. So it's very important that either the person you're sponsoring, you make sure the manager in the business unit, this is the person they want. And of course, you're listening to your attorney's advice on whether that person qualifies, because if there's a risk of an RFE, they should be letting you know so you can anticipate that timing delay and the extra cost.
Gotcha. So Ryan, great breakdown of the fees. Curious, what fees may an employer be responsible for, and what fees may an employee or foreign national be responsible for?
Sure. So it's an interesting question. We get it a lot because the DOL and the USCIS treat these differently. And for those you don't know, the United States Department of Homeland Security, USCIS, they say that you as the employer, you must pay two fees, the $460 and the $1,500, $750, and everything else is sort of not talked about. And then the DOL, they essentially say you must pay everything, including attorney fees. So when you have these two competing government ideology, thought processes, we see sometimes clients come to us and say, well, our law firm told us this, or our employees is saying that we have to pay for everything. And usually as a law firm, for our law firm anyway, we always try to tell you the most compliant way to go is that you should pay for everything. And if there is push comes to shove and you think, well, there's this fee that we just can't pay, we don't think we should pay it, that's a discussion you have with your attorney at that point. There's one fee that they can absolutely pay, and that's the premium processing fee. And that's a $14.10. So if an employer ever comes to us and, at least my response is, should we pay this or do we have to pay this? The answer is no. And I don't recommend you do so unless there's a business reason for you to do so. So if, the reason is that the employee won't start with you until there's an approval notice, I think that's a pretty good reason. If they just wanted to travel, though, that should be borne by them. But each company has a different culture. So it's certainly, some companies want to pay for everything. They want their employees to feel good about it. Other employees definitely need to make sure they're cutting their costs where needed. Several factors there, but overall, that would be the response.
Perfect. Thank you. So obviously we talked about the H1B here, but now we're going to dive into some of the other employment-based visas, starting with the L1. What can you tell us about these fees?
Sure. This will be fairly quick, and so see there's not too much variance here. The L1, for those of you who don't know, it's for an intra-company transferee. So let's say you have Acme Corporation in the UK, and you're transferring an employee to the US, and they've been employed with Acme UK for at least 1 year, they could potentially qualify for the L1. A blanket, you see that word there, those are for companies, usually much larger companies. This program started years ago to allow bigger companies to easily transfer their employees. You essentially get to bypass going through the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. You can go straight to the U.S. consulate. It saves a lot of time and it's cheaper, usually. So you always have that base $460 fee. If you're applying through the USCIS, extra $500, and if it's an extension, you no longer have that $500 fee. If you're a blanket applicant, you apply directly at the U.S. consulate, that foreign national pays that $500 fee. So sometimes you want to think about, as a company, how do you reimburse that $500 fee? You don't have to, but generally most companies do. So do you front load that fee to the foreign national? Do you have him or her submit a receipt to you after the fact? That's really the only piece of advice there and how you formulate your strategy with your employees.
Perfect. And moving on, the last two employment-based visas I want to touch upon in this presentation are the TN and the O1. What about these fees?
Sure. TN is common, O1 not so much. TN is for Mexican and Canadian citizens only. And the NAFTA treaty has a predefined list of occupations upon which you qualify. So just because you're Canadian or Mexican doesn't mean you qualify. And there are several ways to apply. If you're Canadian, for example, you can apply directly at the border and you get a decision that day or at the airport in Toronto or Montreal. If you go that route, you do not pay that $460 fee. There's other very small fees you pay. But if you apply through the Department of Homeland Security, USCIS, you would pay that $460 fee. So if you apply at the border or if you're Mexican, you apply at the consulate, you do save money on your filing fees overall. So as a company, when you think about the process and plans you have in place, you have to think, well, do I want my employees applying at the border or at the consulate? Because if you do, your company will save money overall, and it's a quicker decision. For O1s, these are for people generally with extraordinary ability. It's sort of a hard standard to meet, but if you have these people, sometimes they're people with several years of experiences, PhDs, articles, papers, that type of thing. That's the route you would go, and there's really only one fee. It's $460.
Gotcha. And so moving on, obviously employment visas play a big part, but also green cards. And we see here there's a ton of information. Can you walk us through what our attendees are looking at here? Sure.
And I won't spend too much time on this. There's a lot of words going on there, but it's important to know about it. So you have, for several of these, you have the DOL and the USCIS, two agencies. And right now, the DOL, they do not require filing fees for any of their applications. So I sort of skipped down to the last 3 rows. 2 rows actually. Those involve the Department of Labor. And as you can see in the right-hand column, the fees don't change. And that's because the DOL doesn't require any type of filing fees right now. That could change with immigration reform. But right now, you don't. So these fees represent what it would cost to get your employee a green card. And the different ones, I'll just run through them real quick. That multinational manager is the same as an L1 that I described earlier. There's not an ability to premium process those. So it takes over a year, probably 18 months to get those people a green card. Next one, this is usually someone that's an outstanding or extraordinary ability, similar to an O1. You can premium process these, so maybe get a green card within a year if they qualify. Next one, outstanding professor, researcher, probably not too many employers on the line with those people. But once again, you can premium those, so a green card within a year. Next one, extraordinary ability, similar to the second one, I think. But yeah, you can get a green card within a year. And the last two, you have the perm process. And since you have to deal with the Department of Labor, it takes that process itself, if all goes well, it takes about 10, maybe 11 months to go through the Department of Labor and the various recruitment and other steps until you get to the I-140 and I-45 stages that we're seeing in the first couple of rows. So that's about it for those.
Gotcha. Kind of expanding off of that, in our immigration trends report, we were curious on, for employers, what green card costs do their companies incur? And as we look here, approximately 80% pay for all green card related fees with a contractual stipulation, or pay for all green card related fees, or pay for just the cost associated with the perm recruitment process, not the I-485, excuse me. And while it's a decrease from 2018, still somewhat steady from 2018 and 2017. So just thought that was an interesting stat to share as we talked about, Ryan talked about the green cards. All right, so Ryan just talked about a lot of the government fees, and we were curious to find out, so where does this money go? And luckily there was a study that found out that since 1999, employers have paid approximately $5 billion in H1B visa fees. And so some of these fees are directed in two ways. First, employers have funded approximately 90,000 college scholarships in the U.S. in science and engineering as a result of these H1B visa fees. As of September of 2018, this amounts to approximately $2 billion. Additionally, H1B visa fees have helped pay for the training of U.S. workers in technology fields by way of Department of Labor grants, and also as of September 2018, it's approximately $2.5 billion. So it is interesting to see where these fees are and what the government does with these fees. Study is linked in the footnote section. I encourage you to check it out. All right, so Ryan, as we talk about fees and whatnot in law firms, can you describe the difference between the flat fee and versus other billing measures?
Sure. So, sure, several of you on the line, you've worked with law firms, maybe various ones in the past. So it's always important to know when you're working with your vendor, what are their fee arrangements? And, there's flat fee, of course. Some law firms bill pure hourly, so it's hard to predict how much is this going to cost me. But even if they're flat fees, something to keep in mind, certainly my prior role working with different vendors is, they say they're flat fee for an H1B, and then you find out, why am I getting a bill for a phone call, or why am I getting a bill for this email that I sent? So it's very important that you figure out, okay, what does this flat fee actually encompass? Because different vendors, I'll say different law firms do it differently, and that flat fee can encompass phone calls. It can encompass our fees. It can encompass emails, and just simply communicating with your law firm or even the employee. What are they charging for the employee? Are they charging to talk with the employee? So or even, doing intake of your cases. Are they charging for that? So knowing what that flat fee is all about is so important for you to predict your own costs instead of just saying, well, if I have 5 H1Bs, $5,000 a pop, that's, $25,000. That's all I'm paying. Then at the end of the year, you see, oh, I've spent $60,000 on immigration. Why? So it's very important you look at, whatever law firm you're using, how those fees are calculated. And the other billing, hourly, the trend with most immigration firms now is you do some type of flat fee arrangement. Some still do hourly. It's sort of archaic in the immigration world, sort of still popular, of course, in other fields. But when you do hourly, certainly for immigration, you're going down a hard path, certainly trying to predict what is immigration going to cost you in each fiscal year. And just back to the flat fee, of course, look at case types. You have your basic case types, that's easy. Intake, look at, are they charging me for intake? Are they charging me for phone calls? Are they charging me for emails? Are they charging me for perm audits, R fees? Those are the stuff that comes off the top of my head. So all of you, it's very important. Money's important to your business. You need profits at the end of the day, so it's worth looking into.
Mm-hmm. And one way to kind of shed light on these various fees, because as we've looked at the previous slide, there are a lot of fees, and that developing an immigration budget. So, and how technology can help our attendees with that. So first, I want to share just an example of how tax and transparent technology can help that. There's two things. All right. So as you see here, technology can shed light on your company's spend analysis, whether it's by month or year. Additionally, the tax can help you streamline process, have set triggers and reminders, adjust the report settings so you can go to your managers and higher ups with how much the company's spending on immigration. And basically have all the information at your fingertips. So at the end of the day, you have everything there and whatnot. Additionally, technology can also help with the green card process, because as Ryan mentioned earlier, there are a lot of fees associated with that, with the green card and then perm and whatnot. So with a piece of technology that can forecast green card, you have a better idea on, you can make smarter, more proactive decisions about case management and the fees associated with that. So that's going to end the core of the presentation. I'm going to open up the floor for questions. Again, if you have a question for Ryan, please type it into the GoToWebinar control panel, and we'll get to that question shortly. So please, as we wait for those questions to roll in, I just want to remind our attendees that we have 2 webinars coming up next week. On Tuesday, we're going to take a look at Canada's emergence as a destination for foreign talent. And the next Thursday, Perm Recruitment 101. Take a look at what it is and tips to succeed. So highly encourage everyone to join us for those. Additionally, all of our attendees will be able, there's some continuing education credits for our attendees for SHRM and HRCI. So please take a moment to copy these down. These will also be sent out in tomorrow's follow-up email for you guys. All right. And then as always, be sure to follow Envoy and subscribe to our mailing list so you're always up to date on our latest webinars and piece of content that we publish. All right. So back here. All right, let's open up the floor for questions. So Ryan, first question. You mentioned that some employees are responsible for some fees. The person wants to know, how can I help alleviate my employees' renewal fees?
Sure. So, for H1B, for example, it's the most common, so we'll just pick on that. You get a total of 6 years in the U.S., and in each application, you can request up to 3 years. Well, after each application is a lot. Sometimes you only get 1 year if the person's at a client site. And as we talked about costs earlier, it's quite expensive. I think sometimes when you're dealing with a foreign national who is not born in India or China, you should really consider the green card process for them. Considering that it could take up to 2 years to get a green card for that person. And if in 2 years you get a green card, which is equivalent maybe to the cost of an H1B, you just secure them permanent residence in the U.S., which may be the same fee as paying for the H1B renewal, and you'll never have to do it again. Now, the risk there, of course, is that employees then free to jump to a new employer, which does happen. As compared with an H1B, they're sort of captive to you until another employer wishes to sponsor them, which is harder to do because people don't want to spend necessarily the money for an H1B. So the reason I kept out China and India is because it takes 10 plus years for people from India to get a green card, 5 plus years for people from China. So it's not really a good alternative for companies.
Gotcha. So this question is, what is a biometric fee?
Sure. Biometric comes up in immigration. It's essentially fingerprints, and it applies to people who are applying for like a dependent visa. So not your employees, but if you have a policy where you say, I'm going to pay for up to 4 family members associated with my employee and their visa, you could be reliable or required to pay this fee, which is $85. You don't have to, but it's there per person. It also comes up in the green card process, so an additional $85 fee at the very end of the process, the employee would pay that.
And an example of a dependent visa would be the H4?
Correct, H4, L2 if they're filed inside the U.S. through the Department of Homeland Security.
Gotcha. Let's see. All right, got another one here. So the majority of this presentation touched upon employment-based visas. This attendee wants to know, are there fees for the J1 and F1?
Sure. F1 is a little bit more common. A lot of you are familiar with it. It's for students, and you do not have to pay any fee associated with that. What happens is when they graduate, typically they'll get a work permit for 12 months, and if they majored in a STEM field, another work permit for 2 years after that. So up to 3 years total. And a lot of clients sometimes come to us and say, can you help me with this F1? And our response is usually, you don't have to do anything with this. The student needs to go to their school and talk with their school about it, because the school will take care of everything. So it's not something you need to be wasting money on a law firm with, or even the employee. They should be taking care of it through their school. For J1, not many law firms actually deal with these. We have, certainly GIA, we have our preferred vendor. And once again, you're not liable for any fees there. It's good for interns or trainees, and you got 12 to 18 months usually. And it's something that's valuable if there's no other option and they qualify. We're certainly always happy to share our vendor with you or your current law firm. They should have someone who helps you. Reason law firms usually don't jump in is because it's really just shuffling information from one side to another. And so really shouldn't be charged for it, but sometimes it's needed. It is needed, but always talk to your law firm about their J1 vendor.
Gotcha. So it looks like there aren't any additional questions. I guess, Ryan, my final question, what biggest takeaway for employers at the conclusion of this presentation?
I think always knowing what you're paying for is very important with your law firm. Make sure that all those little costs are accounted for, and that goes into your financial modeling for the year. And, with U.S. immigration, certainly now, nothing's predictable. So certainly with TNs at the border, you just sometimes never know. If you get an officer who has had a bad day, look up on the wrong side of the bed, and the case is otherwise totally approvable, maybe he or she will just deny it. And so it's challenging, it's tough, it's frustrating, certainly for us, because we're going to make sure you're happy at the end of the day. And certainly your law firm, whoever you use, is that they should have the same goal. So it's hard, just always expect the unpredicted sometimes and be ready for anything.
Great. All right. Well, that's going to conclude things for today. I want to thank everyone for joining us for this afternoon's session. Looks like we're going to end about 10-ish minutes early, so I'll give you some time back in your day. Again, please sign up for our webinars next week. Hope to see you there. Have a great rest of your day and have a great weekend.